This is Lesson 7, Multi-Step Inequalities in Unit 2. Here we are on day 12, and we're looking at some focus questions that have multi-step inequalities. These are solved just the same way as multi-step equations. You will use the same steps as CDICIC, where you cross, multiply, distribute, identify your terms, combine like terms, and finally isolating your variable. Keep in mind, though, on step 1 and step 5, if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, you will switch this direction of your inequality. So let's take a look at some focus questions. Alright, focus question number 1. Alright, looking at the problem. I do not see any complex fractions, so I do not need to cross multiply. I do not see any parentheses, so I don't need to distribute. So I'm ready to identify my terms. I have a negative 3, that's a constant. A 1 is a constant. Negative 6v is a variable term, and positive 7v is a variable term. Now, if you follow my recommendation of keeping your variable terms on the left-hand side of the equation and your inequality, and your constants on the right-hand side of the inequality. So we need to move some of these terms. Remember, when you move a term from one side of the inequality to another, that you do need to change their signs. So I'm going to move my negative 6v to the other side as a positive 6v. Also, my 7v, I'm going to move it over as a negative 7v. My inequality stays the same direction that it's pointing because I'm not multiplying or dividing by a negative number. The one that's currently already on the right-hand side of the inequality stays there and it stays positive. But I do need to move this negative 3 to the other side of the inequality, so it's a plus 3. Alright, so I've identified my terms and made sure that they're on the right side of the inequality where I want them. I'm ready to combine my like terms. So I have a positive 6v and a negative 6v. When I combine them, those are opposite signs, so I subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1. 7 is bigger than 6, and it's negative, so it's a negative 1. V is less than, and I combine my positive 1 and my positive 3 equals positive 4. So I've done combine my like terms. Now I'm ready to isolate my variable. But remember, if you multiply or divide by a negative, then you do need to change the inequality. Well, let's look at our coefficient. It is negative 1. It's beside our variable, so we have to divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. And because it is negative, I need to change my direction, my inequality. So v is greater than 4 over negative 1. A positive divided by a negative is a negative 4. And you're ready to graph it. Graph your endpoint. It's left open. And my variable is on my left-hand side of the inequality, so my direction of my inequality should point the same direction that I need to graph it. So there's focus question number 1. Okay, looking at focus question number 2. It's currently reads 40 is greater than 5 times the quantity negative 6r minus 4. I do not see any complex fractions, so I don't need to cross multiply. I do see parentheses, so I do need to distribute this 5 times the negative 6r and 5 times the negative 4. Don't forget the sign. So I will go ahead and use the distributive property. 40 is greater than 5 times negative 6r is negative 30r, and 5 times negative 4, a positive times a negative equals a negative 20. So we've done the distributive property. You're ready to identify your terms. 40 is a constant, negative 30r is a variable term, and negative 20 is a constant. So I'm going to bring my variable term to the other side of the inequality and make it a positive 30r. Remember, when you move one of those terms, you need to change the signs. The direction of my inequality stays the same. I have a negative 20 that was already on the right-hand side of the inequality, but I need to move my 40 over, so a negative 40. So now I have my variable terms on my left-hand side of the inequality and my constants on my right where I want them. And I'm ready to combine my like terms now. 30r is greater than, I have a negative and a negative. I'm combining my like terms, so that's where I have to use my SOB rule. Those are the same sign, so I have to add. So 20 plus 40 is 60, but my bigger sign wins. Don't forget that B. It's negative. Now I'm ready to isolate my variable. I have a 30 that's beside my R. If it's beside it, I have to divide it. So divide by 30, divide by 30. I do not change the sign or the direction of my inequality because I'm dividing by a positive number. So R is greater than negative 60 over positive 30 is a negative 2. I'm ready to graph my inequality. My endpoint is negative 2. It's left open, and because my variable is on the left, that means that my inequality symbol is pointing in the direction that I need to graph it. So there's your answer. Alright, I'm looking at our third example. 5 plus 8x is less than or equal to 7x plus 8. There are no complex fractions, so I don't need to cross multiply. There's no parentheses, so I don't need to distribute. I'm ready to identify my terms. Let's see if I can do it without the training wheels of the circles and squares. You know that you need your variable terms on the left and your constants on the right. So let's see here. Which ones do I need to move? The 8x can stay where it's at, but I need to move my 7x over on the same side with it. That means I need to change the sign of the 7x. My inequality symbol stays the same. The 8 right here is already on my right hand side of the inequality, so it's going to stay put, but that 5 needs to move over as a negative 5. So I've identified my terms and made sure that my variable terms are on my left and my constants are on the right. So I'm done with that step. I'm ready now to combine my like terms. I have a positive 8x and a negative 7x, the opposite sign, so I have to subtract. 8 minus 7 is 1. And the bigger sign wins, it's positive, so it's just positive 1x. It's less than or equal to 8 minus 5 is 3. We do not need to write the coefficient of 1 when it's the only term on one side of the equation, so I don't need to write that 1. That means I'm actually done with solving this problem now. I'm ready to graph it. The endpoint is at 3, and because there's that equal sign, it is a closed endpoint. My variable is on the left where I need it to be, so my inequality is pointing in the direction that I need to graph it. So I point it in this direction. And you're done. Okay, last example before you get to practice these. Looking at the problem, 7 minus 7n is greater than 7 times the quantity 8 minus 2n. I do not see any complex fractions, so I don't need to cross multiply. I do see parentheses, so I do need to distribute. I have a 7 that I need to multiply to every term inside those parentheses. So it's 7 minus 7n is greater than 7, positive 7 times positive 8 equals positive 56. I do not need to write the sign because it's the first term in the expression on that side of the inequality. Positive 7 times negative 2n equals a negative 14n. Don't forget the signs that go with those that second term. That's one of the most common mistakes I see students make. So we're done with the distributive property. We're ready to identify terms. Again, we're going to try doing it without our training wheels. I need my variable terms on this side, so the negative 7n stays put. I'm done with that one. I need to bring the, I'm just crossing them off to show that I'm done with them. It's a great strategy also to use. I need to bring that 14n, that negative 14n, to that other side of the equation. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the training wheels, but we're working to get it past them. Bring it over to the other side is a positive 14n. Positive 14n, I'm done with that term. I write my inequality. Now I need all my constants. Well, the 56 was already over there, so I'm going to leave it over there. And then the only other term I need to move over is that 7, but it's on the wrong side, so it's a -7 when I move it over. So I've identified my terms and made all my variable terms on the left and all my constants on the right. I'm ready to combine my like terms now. -7n and +14n, those are opposite signs, so I have to subtract. 14 minus 7 is 7n. And because the bigger sign is positive, it stays positive. Inequality stays the same. 56 minus 7, what is that, 49? Yeah. Alright, I've combined my like terms. Now I'm ready to isolate my variable. I have a 7 that's beside the variable, so it's beside it. I have to divide it to get it to isolate. I'm dividing by a positive number, so my inequality stays the same direction. And 49 divided by 7 is just 7. I go to graph it. My endpoint is at 7. It stays open because there's no equal sign. My variable's on the left where I want it, so the direction of my inequality should point in the direction that I graph it. That's the last example. Now it's your turn to practice these. This practice page right here is kind of unique and a little different for you. It's just a different way to practice a problem. When you are done with it, you can check your answer in the trail. It says starting with the problem number 1. So what you will do is solve problem number 1, and I'll go ahead and start to do this one for you and show you what you do next then. So if you were solving problem number 1, look and see what would you do first. If you want to push pause and solve it, and then we can check your answer and see what you do next on the trail. So it looks like I need to move my 7 over. Oops. Get my pen out. So -4x is less than -5 minus 7. So I identified my terms and made sure my variables and my constants are on opposite sides and ready to combine my like terms. So -4x is less than -5 and -7 are same sign, so I need to add. And the bigger sign wins, so it should be a -12. Then I have to divide by -4, divide by -4. X is, because I divided by that negative number, remember your inequality changes directions, -12 over -4 is a +3. Okay, so here's what you do next. You look on the gray parts next to each problem and try to find that particular answer. For example, look at problem number 4. Right beside problem number 4 is the answer, x is greater than 3. Because that's the problem I'm going to next. Up at the top where it says the trail is, you started with problem number 1, the next problem you're going to go to then is problem number 4, because that's where the answer was located. And then you will solve problem number 4, look for that answer, and write the number up at the top of the trail. Get an instructor if you're confused about what you're supposed to do here, or solve all the problems, and then we could figure out the trail at the top. Alright, do these on your own, and then you can check it with the, I'll have the answers posted.